Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Please check out my comics at KINGCOMICS.CA. Check out my YouTube channel, King Comics 2021 for more videos. Check out my Instagram, MaximusRex13, and check out my Facebook, MaxRex and or Big Baby. So today, guys, is Wildcard Sunday. We're continuing on from last week's episode where we looked at the first issue of Batman Black and White. I have the trade edition here. So this week we're going to look at issue number 2 and finish off with the next couple of weeks after that with issue 3 and 4. So I guess we got like a 4-part series kind of thing going on here on Wildcard Sunday. And what is the interest of this book? It's, I would say, twofold: in the art, of course, and in some of the quirky stories that we're kind of exposed to with this mini-series, because it's basically like an anthology series where it's a lot of just short stories of Batman. It's cool for that, and it's cool to see all the different artistic interpretations that you can encounter that you wouldn't maybe encounter in the regular kind of mainstream comics of Batman, and artists that you wouldn't typically associate with Batman. And these may be the only kind of stories, or sequential stories anyways, that these artists have done of Batman in many cases. Some are more veterans doing something different sometimes, but there's a lot of guys also from areas you wouldn't expect, or artists that you wouldn't expect to draw Batman. Some European guys, some manga stuff. But obviously I'll talk more about that when we get through it. So we're going to focus on issue number 2. And I do want to mention the trade. I really appreciate it because of its oversized format. That's the one thing. It's a little bit bigger than the original comics as they were published. And I love seeing the art a bit bigger and, close to, or maybe just about original art size. So let's break her open. We got a little bookmark here for issue number 2. Excuse me. So last episode mistakenly just called this a Frank Miller pinup. It's actually the cover to issue number 2. Kind of controversial these days. Again, Frank Miller, some people online, criticizing his art recently. Listen, I've always enjoyed Frank Miller. I've talked about, you can go look at some of my reviews. I think I even have just organized in like Frank Miller reviews. There's a few of them there. And, he always pushes the art form forward somehow by being experimental or trying different stuff. So I'll always give him credit for that. Dark Knight Returns, as you know, obviously is the reason we have maybe this book is still because of Dark Knight Returns, right? The reason we have a Batman movie in 1989 is pretty much because of Dark Knight Returns, and the popularity coming back to the character with Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, right? So you got to respect what he's done for sure. Specifically about his modern art, I will say this: for me, I don't think it's necessarily better or worse overall than what I see here. Even at this period, it's kind of similar in a lot of its aesthetic, and this is like 20 odd years ago for sure, maybe more. Just some of it is hit or miss for me with his modern stuff. Some I've really liked. His recent Batman cover for, I think, what is it called? It's a Batman series, Gotham Gargoyle or something like that. By Grandpa. I bought the first 2 maybe. I just for the art, and again, not really into it as just a Batman story. That cover looks great, right? And some of the other stuff I thought looked a little wonky, but what are you gonna do, man? The guy's getting there. He's older. He doesn't look in super health, so not that I want to judge that, because a lot of people talked about it. Obviously I'm curious what's going on, but it's not my place to ask. Anyways, that's it about Frank Miller for today. So the first story, Legend, if you don't recognize the art style, that's Walt Simonson. So again, this is kind of a cool, almost, anytime you interpret Batman differently because of what we're used to with continuity and mainstream comics and all that, it's going to be called like an Elseworld story, right? So this is kind of like an Elseworld story. It's Batman in kind of as the savior, in this kind of far-flung sci-fi future, where of course the oppressive forces of government have taken over, right? This is like, the old story. I like these blurbs though. So Walter Simonson: when it comes to raw power and pure energy, no living comic book artist's work surpasses that of Walter Simonson. His dynamic graphic style and pioneering use of sound effects have kept him at the very top of the comics world since the 70s. I would have to agree with that. It's definitely dynamic graphic style, sound effects, and how he uses them in their design and stuff, 100%. That pretty much kind of pins down his style, I think. Walt's personal interests in folklore, legend, and mythology are a continuing thread in much of his work. He explores these themes in depth he explored these themes in depth in his mid-1980s work on Marvel's The Mighty Thor, a stint that was as groundbreaking as it is memorable. So story's called Legend. You could see just in the storytelling here, something's not right in the city. And just amazing art from Walter Simonson. Just like the interior of, you know, a kid's room, but that with that sci-fi bent on it, and just using this contour here as the contour of the panel, I think is very cool and clever, and makes the page move really fast. You know what I mean? This rain here that's angled, kind of the same as using the same parallel perspective lines as what he's used for the buildings here. That works really well together. Even the stacked kind of, you know, almost newspaper caricature type drawing here with different faces and different denizens. He's establishing the look of the future inside and out, right? So, or his future anyways. Very kind of Batman and Batman Returns to me a little bit with the look here, right? Smoke's always nice to create some layering in there. But yeah, here kind of, you know, everyone's got weird little devices on their head, so you have to assume, is it some sort of mind control thing, or, you know, just saying a lot just with the images, right? The text doesn't really, you know, specifically describe the images. It just kind of gives you an overall kind of basic story, right? Exposition. So yeah, so he's basically kind of recreated Batman almost as like a new god character. That's kind of what it always felt like to me when I look at this. It's almost like Kirby Batman. Which is cool. I've you know, if you have any kind of interest in Kirby Batman, I've done a video on Alex Ross's kind of redesign of Batman in the 70s as if Kirby had done it. That's a pretty cool video and some pretty cool art you can look at there. But kind of the same idea here. He's definitely like Walt Simonsonized Batman, but also that influence of Kirby really kind of shines through. And I mean, Walt Simonson just has such a great graphic sense of black and white. Again, it's called Batman Black and White, but it certainly shows that he knows exactly, you know, what he was doing here. I feel like obviously this could 100% be colored, but he knew that everything had to kind of work in stark kind of contrast in black and white, and he's using it everywhere, right? And this is super cool. I love the look, the hundreds of teeth. You know, the mythic Batman is, I guess, what we're seeing here. This is what kind of gives me that New Gods Batman feel, right? It's kind of like if Orion and Batman kind of merged a little bit. He's got his toy scuba gear, right? Like the toy line. Guess he's looking pretty toyetic here. Yeah, that's a word. This is a cool shot. He's using guns, so it's shocking, right? But, you know, it's super future sci-fi Batman here, so he can pretty much do anything he wants. Maybe these are just, oh, I was going to say laser beams, but no, they are actual bullets. All right. And he kind of lives on a mountain in some bat manor on the top of the hill. That's funny. It's very Dracula-esque, right? Even this bit where he's hanging upside down. And I mean, what is, you know, that's not even trying to be, you know, voluminous or realistic. I mean, there's a bit of volume implied here, but that's just a pure kind of design thing that he's done with the Batman silhouette here, which is cool. Just the fact that it's upside down, right? It's interesting. All of this art is interesting, like just the way he segs, like the mountains kind of mold into his cape here. Super cool. Of course, we're talking about a master, so it's a bit of a Moebius vibe sometimes. Like, I've always thought Walt Simonson, well, I know for sure Walt Simonson, was looking at heavy metal back in the 70s, so I feel like there's some of that influence, that Moebius influence. So he's been using lots of stark shadows everywhere, but this one shot here where it's just open, right, makes it interesting and still works in black and white, right, because he's very clear in all his lines and storytelling. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, good old fist of oppression. Next, we got Richard Corbin, Monster Maker. So Richard Corbin is a living legend. The work of this groundbreaking virtuoso has had a greater impact on mainstream comics than that of any other underground artist. Sure. Much of Corbin's style developed from his early work in animation. His amazingly three-dimensional figure work and grossly exaggerated anatomy have contributed to make Richard Corbin a true master of horror, fantasy, and sci-fi comics. His underground work on such titles as Ralph and Den, as well as his above-ground work in creepy and heavy metal, is considered by many to be the best of their genres, or genre. Jan Strnad, I don't know how to say that name. He's always writing for Corbin, I guess, or a lot of times. Best known in the comics world for his collaborations with comic legend Richard Corbin, writer Jan now spends much of his time writing for television. Jan has written for an incredible array of comics publishers, including mainstream, independent, and underground companies. So there you go. There's the pedigree. If you don't know about Richard Corbin, yeah, he's been around for a while. I discovered him kind of through heavy metal as well, with Den and the heavy metal cartoon first, and then the magazines eventually. They mention his, grossly exaggerated anatomy, three-dimensional figure work. He works from sculpted models. He will actually sculpt things and then kind of use them as reference, right? So he'll sculpt faces and stuff and light it with a lamp and stuff and give it some dramatic lighting and yeah, basically. So I don't think he does it all the time, but he definitely, if something like this is a possibility when there's a close-up and stuff, that he might have like a small little figure he sculpted, just again to use as reference. Another guy who's really understood the assignment, black and white. Everything's pretty clear and easy to understand all the way through, even though there's a lot of texture, as is known in Corbin's work. I always like this dynamic figure here that he does. There's something he does with the muscles where he does exaggerate them, but it does feel natural. I don't know. It's hard to describe. Yeah, it's like he's got all the poses down and stuff, Frazetta style, but then he really exaggerates the anatomy. Not afraid to make it ugly. I love these like super perspectives that he's doing, like you're an ant down here looking up at Batman. It's just kind of a triangular thing you kind of establish and work your way up or down, depending on what you prefer. Making it obvious that Batman's mask is like a layer, right? I guess he wants to make Batman, again, more like a man dressed. There's two kind of versions of Batman, right? That artists do. It's either, the mythic kind of Dracula, scary Batman, who's more of a shadow and a shape, or you've got the guy who's like, maybe after Frank Miller, there was more of this as well, but like Batman is a guy wearing a bat costume, is basically, those are the kind of the two versions of Batman that are out there. Argue with me, fight me in the comments. I'm just kidding. But you can argue if you want. That's I definitely invite that. Ideas on that, let me know. So yeah, all of this stuff, like the anatomy work is flawless, and then he just kind of like distorts it and exaggerates stuff, right? Even here, like, my god, the size of the waist versus the shoulders and the muscles and stuff, that's, he knows his anatomy, but then he just like I said, totally exaggerates it. An interesting choice to just cut in with, maybe helping that sense that the costume is a costume, right? Almost Adam West-y a little bit. Adam West-ish. Like something like this for me kind of maybe feels photo referenced. Could be wrong, but great reflection in the water here too. That's cool. Very well done. Oh, even this kid's face is reflecting from the back 3/4 kind of thing. That's a nice little detail. Hadn't even noticed it. Dead boy eyes. Yeah, so Kent Williams, I don't hate this one here. It's maybe a little less interesting to me artistically. Not that he's bad or anything. The actual story is kind of interesting. Some guy comes out of the sewers and shoots Batman. And Batman kind of is down but not out and kind of survives at the end to fight again. Again, this is one where maybe it's because of the story, right? It's this thing we've seen 1,000 times. Kent Williams is a bit of an anomaly in the comics business. His fine art work fetches handsome prices in galleries, and his book and magazine illustrations have won several awards from the Society of Illustrators. He brings to the comics medium an edgy, impressionistic style that showcases exceptional draftsmanship and raw power. Among Kent's memorable comics work is Blood, A Tale, Tell Me, Dark, and Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown. I do like Havoc and Wolverine, that miniseries, so I guess I maybe prefer his painted art. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with it per se. Just when it gets very distorted like this, and Batman, just has a very odd face in this one. But like the postures and stuff I like. Little confusing in some parts, right? Like what exactly is going on? As I said, yeah, Batman gets shot and kind of left for dead. This guy throws him down the sewer. And then he's got kind of a dialogue with himself here. Like I said, not my favorite. Cool shot at the end. This, I would say, is maybe more Batman as a monster, shadow, kind of Dracula figure, right? Kent Williams is maybe doing a little bit more of that. Next is The Devil's Children. This one's pretty cool. I like the art in this one. Jorge Zafino. Born in Argentina, Jorge Zafino has been drawing comics since the age of 16. His work for South American, European, and North American comics is widely hailed for its brutal richness and striking draftsmanship. Zafino's work on the 1987 series Winter World is widely considered some of the most impressive comics work of the past decade. I have no idea what that is. Let me know in the comments. Does that exist? Winter World? I'd like to see that. Chuck Dixon is the writer. Chuck Dixon was born in Philadelphia in 1954. From time to time, he has held the title Comics Most Prolific Writer without shame. And yeah, he's written for Batman for years, right? At this point, he currently writes Detective Comics, Robin, Nightwing, and Green Arrow for DC. Chuck lives in the Brandywine Valley of Pennsylvania with his lovely wife Elma, his lively sons Colin and Gavin, and his pitch schnauzer Squire. I would assume that's some outdated information. Don't want to assume that some of those people have passed away or those animals, but anyways. So this story is The Devil's Children. Right away, there's, you know, you get a sense it's going to be a fairly realistic kind of look, right? And what I think I like about this one is I feel like he's kind of doing a little bit of the Burton Batman at this point, right? So he's seen the movie and he's like, oh, well, you know, he's got a fairly realistic style, even though it's stark, right? Black and white, lots of contrast, which obviously probably why they tried to get him to do some work for this. It works really well in this format, his art. He does use some screen tone as well, which I think is cool, and add some grays here and there. And yeah, I really feel like he's going more for the Burton kind of look. Even the belt down here, even though you see just the highlights, it does feel more Batman-esque, Batman movie-esque. And just the shapes of the brow and the stuff, you know, the molding for the Batman cowl and his face, in quotes. Definitely taking inspiration from the 1989 Batmobile as well. Funny here, where like these two shots here I find interesting because as you know, fairly well illustrated, although rough in style, but I mean the like, proper anatomy and perspective and stuff. I feel like with these two shots here, he almost lets himself like exaggerate this Batman shape a little bit. So even though there's that once again aspect of it's a guy in a costume, here it's more like a shape. Or, you know, some sort of, again, vampire, ghost, or Dracula kind of, you know, breaking in. He allows himself to rough it up a little bit. And just little details like those studs under his boots. I think that looks really cool and gives it that realistic kind of feel. Even here, the way that you can see here how, you know, that's all mask, cowl, helmet, right? No one's head is actually shaped that way, at least not the guy underneath, not Bruce Wayne. And even the kind of silhouette that he does here really, to me, speaks to Batman 1989, the influence here. Some great looking stuff overall. And just sometimes, yeah, like I'm impressed. He's very precise, probably in his layouts and stuff, I'm sure. It looks really clean. And then he just really dirties it up and darkens it up with the inks and goes kind of, clearly does this fast, right? But in a good way because it keeps the art looking dynamic. And, you know, just a good example of sometimes you don't have to draw everything perfect. You just have to kind of suggest it. Look at this hand here. This is the perfect example. Is this the best drawn hand in the world? Absolutely not. I don't know how long it took him to do this, but maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds at the most, right? But as you're reading this, you're paying attention to all the great kind of texture work and inking that he did on the artwork over here, the gun, you know, you're following the story and stuff. So this only registers as two hands, you know, real quickly. And that's all you really need to recognize it as a hand, and it works. Yeah, and then it just kind of becomes a police procedural. Black and white world. This is a fun treat because it's Simon Bisley. Simon explodes onto the comic scene with his work on Slain for England's Fleetwood Comics. Fleetwood Mac Comics. His major American comics debut was on Lobo the Last Sarnian. I think that's how you say that. Xarnian. The first Lobo miniseries where his frantic pyrotechnic style completely bowled fans over. He followed that with a fully painted Batman Judge Dredd Judgment on Gotham, which is super cool. I have both, right? The Lobo miniseries and that crossover, that painted crossover with Judge Dredd. Great comic. as well as several other Lobo projects before basically dropping out of sight. He resurfaces occasionally to do some project or other. This is one of those. Oh, Neil Gaiman wrote this. Well, he's been kind of problematic, if I can use that word, in this context for the last kind of week or so. Obviously, these videos come out, you know, about 2 weeks later, so he's been talked about a lot in the last week anyways. So maybe I just won't give too much attention to that, and just move on and look at the art. So this is actually, unfortunately, I gotta say real quick, Neil Gaiman here kind of gives us an interesting, fun story. Like I said, one of those different spins on Batman, and Bisley definitely, you know, delivers with the art. He's got kind of a very specific, almost more Johnny Rotten punk rock, Billy Idol kind of version of the Joker, which is his own and interesting. You know, Frank Miller kind of did his own version of Joker in Dark Knight. So, you know, some artists tend, I guess, artists who don't do Batman quite as often seem to do that. It's a thing. I'm sure they're not the only two who've done that, right? But yeah, so the story is interesting. So Batman and the Joker are basically just actors, and they're rehearsing their lines here for the next kind of big scene that they're shooting in, you know, the Batman adventure, whatever it is. So they've been kind of talking about that, and now we kind of get into where they're shooting for the movie, or in this case for the comic book, right? So this is like in character. Great art. Bisley's awesome. He's definitely doing the I would say that maybe the contrast there. There's no contrast. He's doing spooky kind of monster Batman from the beginning, and that's what we get all the way through. So that's what he's interested in. Frazetta Batman, right? It's kind of what we're getting. And Lobo's like the director. That's pretty funny. And there you go. So off they go after that, I think, to grab a drink or something. Just Batman and the Joker, two actors in this whole crazy story that is the story of the Batman. So yeah, just again, that's one of those, in spite of who the writer is, one of those different spins on Batman that I think is very interesting, and why a book like this is interesting. The Joker has a swastika. Of course he would. And then we get more of those cool bits. I don't know if this was in the miniseries. It's in the trade. Sometimes another good reason to get a trade if it's not in the miniseries. Something like this. So Michael Kaluta leaves a sketch on my desk while I'm out to lunch, and I don't have the slightest idea what it's supposed to be. When I call Mike up an hour later, he says, "Mark, don't worry, trust me. This is usually the kiss of death from a freelancer, but being such a big fan of Mike's work, I tell him to go ahead with the piece." Needless to say, I was not disappointed. Now, have we seen it? That's odd. I guess I missed it, maybe turning the pages and stuff, but yeah, look it up on Google, I guess. I don't have time right now. Walt Simonson. Here's kind of a cool shot of a layout to see, you know, how some artists are pretty messy with their layouts and just kind of getting the basic shapes down and stuff. So I think that's generally what a layout should look like. And I guess he works it out in the inks, right? When an artist is laying out a cover image or story page, it's pretty easy for him to capture a lot of power and dynamics in his thumbnail sketch. After all, thumbnails are simple, gestural scribbles that don't need to be weighed down with correct perspective or musculature detail. Unfortunately, it's almost impossible to completely recapture that feeling of power and strength in your final pencil drawing. Very true. It's something a lot of people struggle with once they go to ink their artwork. It's something, I'm just repeating it anyways. It's something every artist struggles with, every artist except Walter Simonson. Walt's natural talents have made him the successor to Jack Kirby as comicdom's most dynamic artist. I guess, you know, if you're going in order of age and when they started getting published, so yeah, he would be the heir apparent to Jack Kirby. I would agree with that. I'm okay with that. His Orion series is one of the only, you know, New God stories that is not Jack Kirby that I do like. So that's saying something. And another guy I think who could do an awesome job on New Gods, which I would love to see at some point, is Eric Larson, right? I talked about this with my buddy Nick, who you've met on the Fantastic Four Jack Kirby Day. And also, I read recently that Rob Liefeld was even at some point interested in doing a New Gods book or miniseries or something, which again I think would be interesting, whether you're into Rob Liefeld or not. I think Rob Liefeld would probably you know, work really hard on something like that in homage to the King. I really do feel that, so I think it would be interesting no matter what. So we got some more Kent Williams stuff that I'm not going to get into, and cool Barry Windsor Smith image to finish us off here. A rare shot of Batman with pupils here, and Barry Windsor Smith actually gives him like very kind of thick eyelashes. No, it's kind of theatrical and weird. Maybe like a 1930s kind of Batman kind of look is what we're looking at here. It's kind of fun. All right. And of course, I've done the same mistakes I did last time, so that's probably the cover to issue number 3, right? So which we're going to cover in a week's time. So there you go, guys. That is my review of Batman Black and White number 2. Questions, comments, concerns, let me know down below. I'll try to respond as best as I can to everybody who does. If you're subscribed and you're still watching the videos, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a second. Really helps channel out, helps us grow. It helps get us out there to other people who are into comics just like we are. So everyone out there, thank you for watching and have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.